coming up on 7 o'clock. We'll be talking with Ed Spencer about the Juniper Ridge Landfill and the DEP and Casella Waste coming up next. Jason, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me.
A new voice, a new choice for Pulse. WZON Bangor.
NBC News Radio. I'm Derek Van, and I was up there. Hey, speaking of great stuff, joining us on the telephone right now is a guy who's been working, well, tirelessly for years now, trying to stay on top of and out in front of what's transpiring at the Juniper Ridge Landfill, as operated by Casella Waste Systems. It's just been an unbelievable scenario, the way things have unfolded here, and some of the most recent developments are some of the most amazing, the ones that leave you with the most incredulous look on your face, I guess. It's Ed Spencer from Old Town. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Don.
Hey, it's great to have you back on the show. Bring us up to speed here. Where are we at? What's going on? I know that apparently there has been an appeal that's been filed by Casella Waste Systems. Maybe we should go back a little farther than that.
Okay. So just before Christmas, Commissioner Aho at DEP issued a approval of a license amendment that Casella had been after, and to allow some curbside garbage from southern Maine to come up to Juniper Ridge Landfill, where it's by rule not supposed to come. So they applied for this amendment, and Commissioner Aho, I think she tried to forge kind of a compromise. So she didn't give Casella everything they wanted. She didn't reject it like we wanted. She did limit the amount from like 93,000 tons to 81,800 tons.
And if I remember correctly, though, Casella had essentially said that despite the fact that we've been allowed this opportunity to increase the volume of curbside garbage coming to this facility by over 80,000 tons, it's not going to mean one more truck at all. No more.
Yeah, right, and that's one of my bases. So I filed an appeal as well as Casella with the Board of Environmental Protection, and you remember they are a citizens oversight committee.
Yes.
And that's actually one of my bases for my appeal, is that the department and Casella insist on making these false comparisons and saying just what you said there, that there will be no more trucks, that there will be no additional trucks coming to Juniper Ridge. Well, how else do you get 80,000 tons? It's 30 tons per truck. There's not going to be any increase. Well, what they're doing is saying they're comparing the future with back when the Merck incinerator in Biddeford was still operating, and all the the byproducts and the ash that used to come to Juniper Ridge from there was over 120,000 tons a year. So they're saying there's going to be less waste coming in. Well, the only thing is, Merck doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So they kind of lost their leverage there, I think.
Yeah. How can you make a comparison? Suggest that what'll transpire in the future when you're basing it upon information that comes from a decidedly different past that is just no longer the case.
Right. So that's one of my bases. So, but the situation now where Casella files an appeal. Okay. Now remember, the Juniper Ridge Landfill is owned by the state. So part of the state government is actually a co-applicant with Casella, the Bureau of General Services. Okay? So I think this is kind of unprecedented.
Yeah, doesn't this set up a situation where you've got one state agency that's appealing a decision of another state agency?
Exactly.
This is just getting way too convoluted here.
Exactly, and I would love to hear what Governor LePage might think about this situation as it develops. But
yeah, it would be interesting to see if he has anything to say. We're going to have to start reaching out to some of the elected representation for Old Town and the surrounding area to find out exactly what their stance is here. I mean, this is set up to be a real fiasco, Ed.
It could be, and I just don't know what kind of. For starters, I hope that the board finds my way and upholds my appeal, which would reject the whole notion. And keep MSW for the most part out of our state landfill as it was planned over 10 years ago.
It seems that would be the smart play for the state at this point. It would avoid this potential conflict, pitting state agency against state agency, and it would also address the concerns of the residents, who are living in areas adjacent to the Juniper Ridge Landfill. That seems like a win-win, I guess. Unless, of course, you're Casella, right?
Well, Casella, they're most of their customer base is in southern New England, and they only have control of so many places to dispose of this. They've lost Merck, which was their decision. Mm-hmm. So now I guess all that curbside garbage from the Merck towns is going to Bethlehem, New Hampshire, landfill up there. So it's kind of nice in a way for the first time in 10 years that the ratio of imported waste coming into Maine has actually dropped.
Now,
starting to reverse.
I was going to say it sounds like though we're still probably a far cry from Maine being a net waste exporter.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't have the exact figures now, but I think we import probably about 5 times as much as we export.
Wow. Now, Ed, we're speaking with Ed Spencer. You have intervener status in this situation, right?
Correct. Well, we had intervener status during the public hearing part, and now I'm an appellant, and I should state right off that it's my name on the appeal, but it is I have an awful lot of input from some people, and we kind of decided that the best thing, most practical thing to do is for me to file the appeal because I've had standing with the board before.
Right. Just trying to keep it as simple and straightforward and streamlined as you can, in an effort to see to it that all of the people involved at the state level are really keeping their eye on the ball and not being distracted by extraneous nonsense.
Yeah. So I think what's really happening here too is our state waste hierarchy is maybe be literally going on trial here. The Casella claims that the DEP cannot apply the hierarchy in making this decision, but it's pretty clear, I think, in state statute that is the idea that you're supposed to reduce, reuse, recycle, compost, incinerate, and only then landfill. So what's happening is we're going from incinerating to landfilling of all that stuff that used to, all the garbage that used to go into Merck and Biddeford, and it's just a big step backwards. Casella says, "Oh, well, just bring it to the landfill." What's wrong with that? And
nothing when you're getting paid by the ton to bury the stuff, right?
Right, which is the cheapest way of disposing it. The only thing is, you've left this time bomb. I mean, we all drive by the shut down Casella landfill there in Hamden, and you can see kind of the uneven settling there. And once the fabric over that covers that starts to stretch, if it tears, then you're going to have methane escaping and other noxious odors.
Ed, when you talk about that waste hierarchy, it's reduce, reuse, recycle, incinerate, and finally landfill. And it looks like for tens of thousands of tons of municipal waste, curbside waste, we could just be skipping right over one of those phases of the hierarchy.
Right.
Is there capacity in Maine? Is it feasible for incineration to still occur? Are there other facilities that could accommodate that waste and see it incinerated in keeping with the state's current waste hierarchy?
Okay, that's a great question, Don. Yeah, there are 3 remaining incinerators or waste energy plants, as they're referred to. There's the largest one is PERC here in Orrington.
Yes.
And the other, there's the Maine in Portland, South Portland, and MWAC in the Lewiston area. The latter 2 are community-owned cooperatives. PERC is partly so, it's 25% owned by a bunch of towns. And the thing of it is, to fulfill their electricity contracts, all these waste energy plants need to put out, keep burning stuff constantly around the clock, except when they have to shut down for maintenance. So in order to do that, the amount of waste generated within the state of Maine fluctuates. It's kind of seasonal. So what they do is they take waste from out of state to balance that, to fulfill their needs. Well, just by chance, the amount of in-state MSW that Casella wants to bring up and put in the landfill, that would just about exactly balance out the needs of the other incinerators.
So what we're talking about here, okay, those waste to energy incinerators. We hear this a lot when we start talking about some of these more green energy solutions, things like wind power or solar, and the fact that it's sort of an uneven generation, and that creates issues for the power grid. And that's what they're talking about here as well, right? The fact that unless you've got that waste to energy incinerator going on a consistent basis and it's churning out a sort of a reliable level of power, it can create problems. So they bring in out-of-state waste because the waste generated in-state isn't sufficient to keep that going at a nice, smooth, even keel. And the amount of out-of-state waste that has to be brought in to keep that relatively uniform is, within a degree or so here of being just the amount of curbside waste they're talking about now landfilling and skipping over the whole portion of our own state's waste hierarchy that is incineration.
Right. So what I'm arguing is that it is true that the department does not have the authority to tell Casella where to take their waste, okay? But they can tell them where not to take it, and that's right here. I think if things were kind of left alone, eventually that's probably what would happen.
I gotta tell you, Ed, I feel like telling Casella where to put this stuff. We're at 7:20 now. Let me take a quick commercial break. I want to come back and continue this conversation on the other side, okay?
Right.
It's Ed Spencer from Old Town, keeping some feet to the fire here, trying to make certain that, that Maine follows the law. 7:20 right now, AM 620, The Pulse, WZON. 7:23 right now, AM 620, The Pulse, WZON, Pulse Morning Show, and hey, we're going to maximize our time with Old Town resident Ed Spencer, who's been keeping a very keen eye on developments involving the Juniper Ridge Landfill and Casella waste systems. And we were talking a little bit about that waste hierarchy and concerns that Casella is looking to landfill waste that, according to the state's own waste hierarchy, should first be incinerated before it's even considered for landfill. And there are some people who are saying, well, how can that be better to burn the stuff? Isn't that kind of a filthy, nasty disposal method as well? What's the story? Incineration versus landfill.
Okay, the best scientific evidence is that if you take a ton of curbside garbage and incinerate it, it will yield 10 times the energy that it would yield if you put it into a landfill and harvested the methane gas coming off it.
Okay, and if you think about it, that makes sense. We're talking about the potential energy of this material. It does certainly make sense, at least to me, that if you burn it and you use the heat that's generated to generate some energy, when you compare what the pollution effect from that process would be to, burying it in the ground and waiting for decomposition to, miraculously provide you some sort of a usable gas, it seems like a no-brainer that incineration would be way ahead of landfill.
Part of my argument, my appeal is that Casella and DEP are off base when they say there will be no increase in methane gas emissions from this landfill. And the problem there is that they're only required to measure gases coming off the landfill quarterly, so 4 times a year. And when they do it, they measure over the covered part of the landfill. So they never take any readings over the active face of the landfill, where they're actually dumping it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of methane and other harmful gases coming off that. And I wish they would just simply put in a requirement to take some measurements of that before they make these claims that, oh yeah, we catch 90%. Well, they just don't have the basis for making that statement.
Now, we're speaking with Ed Spencer from Old Town, Juniper Ridge Landfill. Ed, there was a deal that was in the works that was going to essentially pipeline gas that was captured, that was reclaimed from the Juniper Ridge Landfill down to the University of Maine, right? They were going to hey, we're going to power the university with trash.
Apparently, there was an article in yesterday's Penobscot Times that I haven't read yet, but apparently that deal is dead. What was happening, Casella had to make an agreement with Bangor Natural Gas, because Bangor Natural Gas kind of has the franchise for gas in this area.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been for, I think over 2 years now, trying to hash out some kind of arrangement, and finally it sounds like they just gave up. They had to go before the PUC to get approval. And the problem is Casella just doesn't have any money, which they kind of admitted at one of our landfill advisory committee meetings. So, yeah, sure, we want to build this 8-mile pipeline, but they want to get someone else to put up the money for it. And it was kind of literally a pipe dream. And it doesn't mean nothing can happen eventually. But at least for now, that deal is dead. And as an Old Town taxpayer, there goes my $80,000 to $100,000 worth of legal fees to set up the city's involvement with that.
Ed, we're coming up against the clock here. It's almost the bottom of the hour. What can people do? I mean, you're listening to this. It sounds to me like we've got to have people throughout the region here reaching out to their lawmakers and demanding that the state follow its own waste hierarchy. It seems common sense to me that there are alternatives to landfilling this stuff already in statute.
Well, there are efforts underway in the legislature. Not sure, what's going on right there. Senator Emily Kane, she co-sponsored a bill which is still alive in some form there. To contact her, and I also noticed that in a couple of op-ed pieces in the Bangor Daily News, legislators have been talking about Congressman Mishu's experience as an environmental candidate, and what they mention is that he had a lot to do with putting in this state waste policy. So Congressman Mishu needs to be engaged on this to find out what he thinks about. They set up this hierarchy, which was fairly enlightened legislation back then, and now it's people like Casella are trying to pick it apart. So it seems like this being an election year, perhaps unfortunately, but let's get these topics out there in discussion.
Yeah, hey, you're exactly right, and I absolutely appreciate your time in helping us to do just that. Get it out there, give people a heads up, and hopefully make some folks recognize that they need to get involved in the process. to see the right thing happen here. Ed Spencer, we'll turn to you again in the not-too-distant future for updates. Okay, sir?
Well, thanks so much for having me, Don.
You betcha.
Really appreciate it.
You betcha. It's 7:30 right now. That means we got news and sports and weather coming up. We'll play a little Who the Hell Is This, too? It's the Pulse Morning Show.